Hey, today on episode 480 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast, we chat with our new friend, John Courtney, one of the owners and founders of Chop Shop Park City. John shares the story of Chop Shop Park City as well as what got him interested in becoming a butcher. Fascinating story here, guys. I don't think that we've ever had a butcher on the podcast. Maybe, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we're going to get into that conversation here in a couple of minutes.
Yes, we are. But before we do, I think we should introduce ourselves. Don't I have great ideas?
Probably, yeah.
I'm Chrissy Hollifield.
Hey, and I'm Chris Hollifield.
And we're married. And if you're a long-time listener, you know that. And welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, you might be wondering what it's all about. Well, hang tight, because we're here every week for you with a brand new episode where we get to showcase awesome people in Salt Lake City and surrounding areas. We get to talk to business owners, authors, tattoo artists, restaurant owners, breweries, distilleries, food truck owners, really anyone that might have a cool story to share.
Hey, and like I said, John Courtney is on this episode. He has a cool story to share. He is the owner and founder of Chop Shop Park City. Great location. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed chatting with him. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Here we go. I want to find out though, right off the bat, man, what got you interested in being a butcher? Because not everybody, I'm sure, wants to be a butcher.
You know, it's something I've been doing throughout my culinary career for other chefs or for other restaurants. And, you know, it's part of the job, as well as sometimes that was like my designated task for most of the day. Fish butchery, animal butchery, whole animal butchery, those type things. And so I always really enjoyed it. It was a way to kind of escape and a way to, you know, kind of zone out. And, you know, it's very precise and you really can't make too many mistakes as it's very costly, especially in the restaurant scene. You know, butcher, you know, you can grind a lot of things. You can make sausage out of a lot of things. But if you don't have those items on a menu or there's not a facility to remove some of any of that waste, right, and turn waste into something that isn't truly waste, it's just trim, or maybe you make a mistake on a cut. So what do you do with it? Does it become staff meal?
You haven't always been a butcher though, right? Like how long have you been a butcher and what got you into it?
Yeah, ultimately, you know, my first real butchery position would have been at RM Seafood. I worked for Rick Moonen in Las Vegas, where I truly had to butcher all day long as a sous chef. I was opening sous, and so that was part of the job, you know, and the position. Not that other chefs in the room didn't assist in that, but a majority of the time, that was my position. And you're in a cold room, you know, in Vegas, that sounds amazing, but you know, when you're in the middle of a hotel with air conditioning, it's not always that warm.
You're kind of trapped.
You put like warm towels in a low oven or towels in a low oven and then wrap them around your neck in the colder months and go into the butchery and like sit in this cold box for 4 or 5 hours, just butchering fish. And I really enjoyed it. You know, I'd turn on music and just kind of zone out and have a good time, you know, like in there. And so I remember those days, and through all the years of cookery and opening restaurants and things of that nature, one of the crafts in our culinary world really to me was butchery, and something that is an older skill, you know, in our sense, or kind of a surgeon is a doctor, but he's a surgeon, right? So, or she is a surgeon for that matter, you know, so I just kind of liked that it was a honed portion of our craft, if you will. So when the opportunity arose to open something and we saw a need up here, I felt like butcher was a good starting point, but that goes twofold. So I spent a lot of time in Europe. I've opened restaurants in Europe. I've worked in Europe for a long time. These earbuds are the worst. My ears are either too small or I don't know. Sorry. So they'll pop out occasionally as we're talking. It's just going to happen. But no, so I spent some time in Europe, and then, you know, you start seeing eatables being built in the United States, which is a much larger format of what we were looking to do. But, you know, in the same sect that, hey, you're going to go take an artisanal part of culinary and you're going to offer it either cooked or raw, and someone can either have it there right then or take it home and eat it, or take it home raw and cook it. So to me, I really liked that. And in Europe, you know, having a butcher, he's also got your bakeries, your fish, he's, you know, sometimes your wine, you know, they're pretty much everything in some of these smaller towns. Or next door, they'll have a necessities that you're looking for. So I thought, why not kind of introduce that? My business partners had found a location in Napa, Healdsburg, actually, sorry, called Journeyman Meats. And Journeyman Meats is, cheese and charcuterie forward. They had a wood-fired oven. They do some flatbreads, some pizzas, but a little bit different idea than what an eataly is, or that realm of food courts, food halls, things of that nature. So with what I had just opened for Cosmopolitan Hotel, I worked for Cosmo, was my prior job to coming up to Park City, and opened Block 16, which was 6 restaurants that they curated. And we opened 5 in one day and 1 a month later. Yeah, so it was a large daunting task. But yeah, and I spent a year prior working with every restaurant. So Lardo in Portland, Pock Pock in Portland, and all of their teams, Hattie B's in Nashville, and District Donuts, Sliders and Brews in New Orleans.
So what brought you to Utah? It sounds like you really studied and traveled abroad.
Yeah, my grandparents lived in Truckee my whole life, and I spent a lot of time up there and snowboarding and skiing, and I lived in Reno for a while, and so my goal was always to get back to the mountains. My wife and I had visited Park City several times, fell in love with it from a ski perspective, and everybody told us, hey, the summers are even better, but we didn't actually really look at it. We were looking in Denver, of all places, over this. And then just at the last second, something came up, and we visited Denver for the first time. She had lived there for a little while. It was like a summer she had lived there for a school externship. And so she really liked it. And then I got there, and it's a pretty foodie town, and I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area. So it kind of reminds me of that eclectic group of, mixed cultures and, different ideals, but you can all cohabitate in the same environment in a big, kind of city environment.
Very diverse.
I really enjoy that. And Park City is not exactly that necessarily, but
slightly less diverse.
Yeah.
We're working on it, though. We're working on it.
Yeah, we are. We also have a young son. I have an older son, a 21-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it was a better place to raise a child than Vegas, in my opinion. Not that Vegas is bad. You just pay for everything there. If you really want to raise a child, you got to pay for it, from a school perspective, because their school system's just not that great. Up here, a more family environment. We wanted to kind of move away from big cities. Being able to actually afford a piece of land in my family, I was really stoked, to have that opportunity. And she had a position with Waldorf Astoria at the time, so they had headhunted her to come up here. So it was good for her career path as well, to evolve from that general manager up into a director role.
Well, that's really cool, because it seems like a positive move for everybody.
It really was. I was a little lost in the shuffle in the sense of what I was working on prior to what I came up here to do. But then in the end, everything happens for a reason, right? And so my business partners and I had met, and we started this conversation. And, from there, we kind of built what Chop Shop is today.
Where did you meet your partners at? Were your business partners?
Well, the first time we met was in Vegas at a cooking competition that we used to do at night called Back of House Brawl. And it was a way to kind of bring some of the hotel chefs together, and food and beverage. I shouldn't just say culinary, but to bring, all of hospitality for that matter together. We did it like 8 times a year, and it was on a Saturday night, usually at like midnight, 1 a.m. And you'd go after work, because you typically were off on Sunday, Mondays, or Sundays. If you weren't lucky enough to get Sundays off, then you just powered through. But we'd go and compete on food trucks, and it was for charity. And so, have a chef from, the Cosmopolitan going against a chef from Caesars or something of that nature, or an off-strip chef versus an on-strip chef, or the 2 barbecue chefs in town. We'd raise a good amount of money, and it was a way for us to kind of meet each other, because, each building in that town is like a city. So if you don't leave your little respective city, you may not meet someone next door that could be very beneficial to you, in your, not just your career, but hey, I'm having trouble getting some product in. I know you're a massive steakhouse. Do you have something I can buy directly from you? Or could we trade because we use the same vendor? So there's a lot of things that were beneficial. Didn't happen all the time, but there's emergencies happen. At least you have a friend in need, so to speak, right? So moving up here to us was all about evolving our family life and, getting outdoors more, and I'm a huge snowboarder. So for me, it was, that's why we close on Mondays, to be honest. Chop Shop will never open on Mondays especially the ski season.
That is Nature Day.
Very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So in the summer, we're doing that now. We took a bike ride today. So.
Very cool. Yeah. No, I was curious, like when you got involved with Chop Shop. So it sounded like you were involved right from the very beginning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm
a founder.
The logo was created by myself and my wife.
Really?
Right on.
Yeah. She created the tagline, actually. Everyone approved it. We looked through a bunch of iterations, but the format of the food, the menu, all that I've built out. But that was my portion of the partnership. That's what I brought to the table. I've seen how others have put lightning in a bottle. The Hattie B's of the world and those guys that are amazing operators. And Cosmopolitan Hotel taught me a lot too. They were great operators. But Corey, same thing. Carson Kitchen. Look what he's done to evolve it. So I was very fortunate to work with a lot of great people, some that are well known and some that aren't.
All right, we're going to take just a couple of minutes now and talk to you about one of our awesome sponsors. I love talking about them, UtahMarijuana.org. They're your number one spot for all things medical marijuana, medical cannabis, CBD, and THC. I don't know if you guys remember Tim Pickett way back on episode 420. We brought him in, we chatted with him, we found out what it was like being a medical cannabis doctor here in Utah. Well, Tim, he's behind UtahMarijuana.org, and now they're a sponsor of this podcast. And what's really cool is that their team of medical cannabis experts, they make getting your medical card super easy from your first office visit to navigating the state card application and beyond.
And on top of that, when you have to renew, they will call you and walk you through the whole process until you get your renewal, which is actually really tricky if you try to do it on your, trying to figure it out is crazy.
Yeah.
So they go above and beyond helping you get all of your medicine legally. They have over 20 compassionate and highly skilled qualified medical care providers ready to help you find relief, so you won't have to search for a doctor willing to recommend cannabis treatment. And right now, they're offering an exclusive discount to I Am Salt Lake listeners. Use the code GREEN25 for $25 off your first visit.
Seriously, use that code, get $25 off your first visit, GREEN25.
I did it.
That way they know you came from the podcast. That way you're getting your card and you're supporting the podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, pretty cool. And
win-win.
If you're in the North Salt Lake Bountiful area, check this out because UtahMarijuana.org, they have a location right next door to Wholesome Co., which is the dispensary there in Bountiful. The address is 580 West 100 North, number 4, right in Bountiful. It's actually right next door to Costco, too. So if you know where that is, boom, right there. So depending on where you're located in the valley, they have a location just for you. Hey, isn't it time that you took control of your own health? UtahMarijuana.org. Feel better. For listeners that have not visited Chop Shop, let's be really, this is going to be a very basic question.
Sure.
Let's describe Chop Shop. So you got like kind of a place that people can kind of go get some lunch, right? And then you got a butcher shop.
If you look at our tagline, it's butchered, cured, and wood fired.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of segregated, probably not the best word. Compartmentalize 3 different areas that I felt that you could gain customer base from. One is a butcher shop, first and foremost. Cured, meaning like our cheese and charcuterie and some of the product that we do there for guests. And then wood fired would be our hot food that we could provide to people. So you could come in for a sandwich today and maybe a sandwich next week, but in a few weeks, hey, I see you have dry aged beef. And it's a special event. I'd like to do this for myself or my family. Or I'm going to cook a brisket this weekend. Can I come back on Friday and pick it up? We have family and friends coming into town and they love cheese and charcuterie. So could we get a board ahead of time and we'll swing by and pick it up? Or someone needs something on the fly. Hey, just give me a little bit of time. We'll get it prepared for you right away. Because we slice the order. We do everything and curate it custom as possible. So if that kind of helps, divide things up. And then each of those segments, we work hard at trying to find either the best beef we can, pork, lamb, and not always the best. The farms two roads down may be equally as good. These are the farmers we've been able to locate and talk with and work with closely and found a good story that fits our narrative.
So all your meat comes local there, right?
As best as I can. Predominantly, though, the beef program comes from Kansas. It's Creekstone Farms meat. their story is something that I've been close with for a long time. I've worked with the product for a long time, been out and visited the farms, the finishing farm. They treat their animals on these farms like pets, not like food. And, one of the farms, she predominantly grades prime. They're not carbon copies. These are animals, right? So they're growing. So how she cares for them, they walk right up to her. It was weird. Like I've never seen food react that way, and not to downgrade the animal, but at the end of the day, the animal, we know what it's for. It's to break down into proteins that we want to eat.
But it says a lot that the cows want to come right up to her. That's proof that she's at least loving them and taking care of them.
Yeah. And that matters to me. Like, I want to know that these animals are cared for. I don't need a commodity item. If I did that, I would just go work for one of the large houses, right? Or, just go get a job and be part of that system. And there's nothing wrong with what they do. The larger houses are there for a purpose. I want the guest that wants to come in for something that's more unique, where there's no hormones, no antibiotics, that the animal has been raised humanely, has been harvested humanely. That matters. We found a farm in the Elsinore area. It's where we get our lamb from. And we harvest 2 whole lamb a month, sometimes 3. They're a 6th-generation shepherd. They homesteaded their land in the 1850s and have been there ever since. That's a really cool story. And Utah itself lends itself to a lot of great agriculture. I'm really shocked at some of the things we found. During pandemic, my wife found a local family. Their son was getting a merit badge. So he created a honey company and he put himself through college. And so we buy his local, it's from Heber Valley honey. It's a Judy's farm, it's called. And
Judy's
it's great.
Farm, huh?
Yeah, it's
so cool.
Great honey. And these huge 5-pound tubs of unfiltered honey.
Good
and so
for
you
him.
can find all these like unique little pockets of things. Gold Creek Farms, we get our cheese from. Onto the menu side a little bit, not to kind of like bounce around, but we do have a wood-fired oven, and that is in the tagline. And I didn't want to be a pizzeria. That's not what I wanted to be.
And that's like the first thing you think of when you hear wood-fired or brick.
Yeah, and I don't want to like degrade customers' knowledge, but it's frustrating sometimes when you're like, this is the oldest cooking method in the world, and a wood-fired tube essentially, and to think that it's only used for pizzas is just kind of funny sometimes, and I happen to have been fortunate enough to buy an oven and put it in our yard in Vegas, in our backyard. And that was the first thing people would say when you're buying a pizza oven. Sure, I'm going to buy and spend this kind of money. And all I'm going to do is work for 2.5 to 3 hours to heat it up to the 800 degrees or 700 degrees I want. And then cook for 90 pizza. Seconds. Yeah, like 90-second pizza. And then, I'm done. That was my shtick,
Most of us aren't creative enough to know what else to do with it. That's the problem.
And that's what it's absolutely right. And it's rude of me to make that assumption that others should think outside the box on that. Because you're right. Like it's kind of what they've been designed to be used for, I guess, in restaurant world and, TV and such. But I've done a Thanksgiving dinner in them that are amazing. One of my favorite things is actually to do clams and mussels in them. And using, I have a big cast iron brazier, and they're unbelievably cheap. It's like $45 online for this cast iron brazier. And you heat that thing up, and then you throw everything all at once, your white wine, your garlic, and those things just start popping in the wood fire. It's amazing.
Wow, that sounds good.
Back to that, I did want to do a pizza though, because I didn't want to disappoint having something of that nature and not do a pizza. So we decided to do a Detroit style, which does not come out of that oven. Actually, it comes out of a different oven.
What's a Detroit style?
Yeah, so Detroit style pizza is a deep dish. It's a lighter dough than like a Chicago style. There's a folklore that says it was done in a Detroit oil pan from the Ford factory or Chevy factory. Originally is how the dough was risen in these pans. The cheese melts down the side of it and creates this crown around it. Traditionally, they use a brick cheese, but we use Gold Creek Farms cheese here from Woodland, Utah. Fernando, the cheesemaker, was able to manipulate the hydration levels and some of the salinity so that we get the same effect. But we get to use a mozzarella that's a local cheese.
Oh, wow. That's really
so it's
cool.
kind of play on it. It's a play on, our version of Detroit, if you will. So things of that nature, we thought we could be really unique in each category. Go find great farmers, put up some unique product that, we're not competing against some of the other local greats around here that have been doing it for a long time. I'm not trying to push people around in our own market, that are trying to survive in this time period, especially. Opening in a pandemic is a kind of a unique time to open. I love the fact that, we're new, but everyone's been so kind and embraced us so early on. It's been very flattering.
Speaking of the pandemic, I was kind of curious. So there was a time last year that there was kind of this like meat scarce, right? Like where it was like there was no meat available anywhere. Did that affect you guys at all or not really?
It opened my eyes to more of the bottlenecks in that part of the industry.
Yeah.
For example, there's farms in Camas Valley. They go to harvest or slaughter. Harvest is a much kinder word, I guess, than we're using these days. So they go to harvest their animals and they were turned away. Now, they're already booking these out over a year in advance. And now, due to this kind of issue that has arisen from pandemic, they're now having to book out their slaughters 2 years out. Imagine having to book all of your podcasts for the next 2 years.
You're like, I don't even know who I want to talk to next.
And then wait,
next year. Right?
And then how do you grow or evolve your like podcast direction or narrative, right? Like if you want to continue talking about specific groups of the industry or what direction do you want to turn? How are you going to decide that now and how life evolves over 2 years? And these farmers, they don't make a lot on these animals, so for them to decide they can grow their business by 40 head, 100 head, but then where are they going to process?
And it seems like 2 years is a pretty long amount of time in the life of an animal too.
Yeah, considering that you have to hit them before 3 years or 30 months, actually, in the USDA fashion to make any money on your animals. So you got to be really quick on the draw, really, like to know this. And then 2 years to me is just, I mean, I can't forecast like that. How do they forecast like that? How fair is that? So I wasn't necessarily directly affected, but farms we work with and know well have been adversely affected. So they're having to look for new avenues. A lot of them are moving to mobile facilities. I think you'll start seeing more facilities coming online for harvest. I myself even spoke with some locals out here and the mayor and such. And, would there be a possibility to put something like that out here? We have a lot of land in the Camas Valley. I don't know, in Browns Canyon. I don't know. There are areas that could help a lot of these Utah farmers and Wyoming too, because we're not that far away, right? So for them to have to truck down, 6 hours or so, it's not that hard for them. But imagine if you have to truck away from here 8 hours and then to find out, hey, you can't go. And then with USDA standard, they have a time frame that they have to hold them now and then return them onto a vehicle, and they can only drive them for so long. And that just, alters the animal's lifestyle, right? And then that starts to translate into the meat as well. When they start stressing out more, it's just not healthy. It's not going to hurt human consumption or any of that nature, but you're going to get not as high a quality of beef. And that's what that farmer needs. They need to grade up and they need high quality beef to make the money they need. So, there is some disparities that you definitely saw or are seeing from pandemic. And the outcome of it is, I don't know if there's ever going to be a shortage of beef, because I don't see that as a true problem as much as transportation and the processing of the animals. Not necessarily just beef too, pork, you look at lamb, you look at any of them, they're all having to be harvested at a very specific facility.
That's interesting. I didn't really know that about the meat industry. I mean, I guess I don't really know the meat industry.
She just goes to the store and buys it, right? Like she doesn't even pay attention.
Yeah.
No, you got to pay attention to that stuff, especially, it's just good to pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to know what you're putting in, and as local as you can get it is, I think, even better. And if it can't, then, you go find the best. You're not going to go, Parma does prosciutto di Parma better than I think anybody. And so you just go buy prosciutto di Parma, right? But if I could get something local that's of that quality or even close to it, why not?
Totally.
Do you take like special requests and stuff there at the butcher shop?
We do. We have several guests throughout the holiday season asking for certain cuts or things done for them. I have a good culinary background, so it's a benefit for me and for the guests sometimes, because they call in and, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I want this. And so I'll write them a recipe too and help them there. I've kind of joked that I may not be the best butcher, but I can cook my way out of it, like.
That's all that matters, man.
So you're pretty good. You got some good recipes for like the organ meats and stuff, or just the bizarre cut, or just the cuts?
No, anything, any cuts that you want. I mean, we make our pate is out of organ meats too. So we use, I
want to try
parts of the lamb we get in, and would love to have you guys in. That'd be great.
I've never had. How do you say it? Pate? I've seen it online. I've never tried it.
It's like cat food, right?
It's like cat.
I mean, ultimately,
it looks like it, I guess.
I think I saw that on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something. So,
I mean, if you think about what pate is, it's, ground and cooked to a temperature and set, right? So you add a lot more love on the side of human food versus cat food. But
no, I didn't mean to belittle it. I'm sorry.
No, I don't take it fighting. There's a funny story about that actually that I would share with you offline someday.
What's the strangest request? Can you share that? Like is there a strange request that you've gotten like ostrich or something like that?
No, the other day somebody actually called, and I hope if they ever listen, they're not offended by this, but they asked for giraffe.
No kidding.
And I was like, excuse me?
That's like super illegal, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
okay, just checking. I mean,
like, no, I would never ever even carry or try it. Like, I just don't see how. Like,
that would be speaking logistically, that seems like it would be a very large animal to have to.
Yeah, that kind of led to some questions, right? Like, do you want the neck portion, or what are you looking to do? Like,
and
have you had giraffe before? Is this?
So did you ask him? I mean, did you stick around, or was it just a quick hang up?
At the time we were busy, and I'm much funnier a few minutes after the fact.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like,
totally hindsight.
Yeah, because I would have been just like, wow.
We should have asked this guy. We get a lot of requests for game meats, though: bison, buffalo, venison, elk. My biggest concern is that most of the time the purveyors that are giving it to me, it would be frozen. So I want something fresh. Due to the way the state agricultural laws and USDA work, we can't accept, a hunter's meats into the case. It has to go through a proper processing channel and then come to us. And I just haven't worked out enough of a streamlined supply chain to be able to put it in the case. But that is our goal eventually too, is to try and get to some of our local farms. I know there's a local bison farm and buffalo farm. And then there's a local venison farm that we're going to start working with here in the next week or two. So it'll be nice to see some different local game meats in the case.
I'm just trying. Now I'm just thinking of all these random meats. I'm like,
well, I know. I mean, Chrissy's making like the bone broth. Okay, yeah. She's always putting weird things in there, that she's asking for me to pick it up at the store. And a lot of times, I mean, when you just go to like Winco or something, you can't find some of that stuff.
I'm like, just get some pig knuckle.
Yeah.
It's easy. I don't even know if that but I got really, I don't even know if that's actually a thing. So
it is.
It's probably not.
You're good.
But there's this book called, what is it called? Like The Odd Bits. And I want to dig into it so bad. And it talks all about, cooking with the strange or the discarded, usually parts of the animals and like cool things you can do with them. And it fascinates me. I wish I had more time to learn about it, but do you ever get into stuff like that, kind of how to use, I guess, just the majority of the animal or all of the animal?
Yeah, you have to kind of like think of what the animal's organ is for. The heart is a muscle, of course, but it's pumping and moving all the time. So it's super, super tough. So if you don't grind something of that nature, you're just going to end up with like innards of a tennis ball, right? Or, like of a softball type thing. Whereas like liver is really fatty. So it's going to melt real quickly. So you have to like kind of decide what methodology you're going to use on cookery for that type organ. You have your innard pieces too, where you make sausage from intestines, and you have hypothalamus gland where you can do sweetbreads, if you've heard of sweetbreads.
I have heard of sweetbreads. I really want to try one. Try making.
They're really tasty.
And eating.
Really tasty. But then there's a process. There's a membrane on it that you want to take off. Some will soak them in milk. Milk has, obviously like lactic acid, so it's going to remove some blood from it. Some say it also tenderizes too. I've heard that from some pretty good chefs. Milk is a good, I would say, probably used the most for offal or the innard pieces, helping just kind of remove iron and blood and things of that nature a lot of times. Kidneys, same thing. Kidneys, though, it processes urine. So it's a filter. It's got a lot of junk in it too. So you want to kind of remove that if you can, or you want to pair it with something very acidic because it's going to be kind of gamey and pungent. So something acidic and something sweet would kind of balance that. We used to do rabbit kidneys as a little like amuse-bouche for a dish I did in France. And yeah, we cooked them down and it was like sherry and balsamic and some like fresh butter and, really like local butter, like local fresh butter. So it was kind of stinky too. But yeah. And then finish with like just some fresh local, like a sorrel and like on a spoon, and people would murder it. And it was super tasty. It was very tasty, but those are parts and bits, like you said, odd bits that don't get used as often. That's why we include them in our pate. It's part of our process too. We can use these items for other things, but some of it we use, like the kidneys for sure. We definitely use livers, heart, and those parts too.
Which is great because they're so high in like vitamins and kind of essential
really
nutrients. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a part of the kidneys that are protected by a type of fat called leaf fat. And so we harvest that as well, and we use that in our buttermilk biscuits instead of using butter. So it's a byproduct that we have a lot of. Instead of wasting it, or trying to sell it, get somebody else to do something with it, we created something from it. It makes a much lighter biscuit.
Is it like a lard, or does it kind of replace butter 1-to-1?
No, not really, because it's almost like if you dehydrated fat in a way, but yet it's still melted, if that kind of makes sense.
Totally. It's like more dense or something.
Yeah, dense, but then it flakes. So that's, I think, where the term leaf comes from, because it kind of like peels apart and breaks apart, and it's very, very crumbly. But as soon as you start to touch it, it's very malleable and melts pretty quickly. But there's not very much moisture in it compared to butter. So you do end up with a lighter biscuit because of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's something we sell in the shop. And then, it's kind of the other piece to it. It's like, I want to share this biscuit with you because we have a byproduct from the butchery side. So we put it in our grab-and-go case. You can take it home and cook it yourself at a later date from frozen. Or we offer a breakfast biscuit that we do all day. And so you get to try our buttermilk biscuit, our local eggs we get, and then our house breakfast sausage that we do. So it's a way to showcase what you could buy out of the butcher shop, what you could buy out of the grab-and-go, but you can also taste something too.
Do you ever get sick of cooking and like doing all this stuff? I mean, do you find yourself like when you're at home and you're like, I just don't want to cook, right? But on that same note, you probably also get asked to cook at every party and every event, and you're just like, I'm sick of it.
Your family's like, just call John.
I wish it was that much work, but it's not. I really enjoy what I do. If you love it, you never work another day in your life, truly. And funny enough, I'll do this all day and then come home and still make dinner for my wife and family. And I used to do it in Vegas too. I'd work a lot longer hours there and a lot more days in a row per se, just because Vegas has never shut down, right? And still cook. I really enjoy it. What I don't enjoy is when I have to choose the meal sometimes. Like, what do you feel like? No, what do you feel like? Right? Like that. If you could just say, I want soup dumplings, I'll make soup dumplings. If you want, I want Indian food tonight. I want, fresh fish, or I want something. Give me a direction. That's much more helpful for me than, I don't know, you're the chef, you tell me, right? And now my wife's a great cook. That's the funny part. Like, she's a really, really good cook.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, and a better bartender, which is really nice too.
So you guys just have like really good food at home all the time, and drinks, it sounds like.
Yeah,
and extra beds.
Yeah, actually we do.
Hey.
That was the other perk of coming up here. We ended up with this really fortunate house that, we can have like lots of our family here, and this thing's going to continue just to pop out of my ear. I guess I need headsets like you guys have. They're way better.
Yeah, well, when you're doing a few more podcasts, you got to get up to
we use them a lot.
Better. No, that's cool, man. That's cool that you found.
It's cool you found something you love much.
Did you ever think about like teaching or anything, like doing some culinary classes or anything?
Yeah, we actually just did our first pizza class. I know I jokingly said I didn't want to be a pizzeria, but wood fire and the wood fired ovens aren't also just for pizzas, but we actually teach a class on how to use a wood fired oven for pizza.
Nice.
There's a lot of customers that have these ovens, which is mind-boggling to me. Some even have them in their homes, which is awesome. So some are knowledgeable, some are not. Some really want one for their house. So, we felt like it would be a good way to teach kind of about what pizza to me means. Because, let's face it, it's flour, water, and yeast. There's not much to it. Time, of course, is a huge factor in how good your pizza is. But, a lot of people didn't understand hydration factor. That's really the key to it all. And then the type of flour, yeah. But other than that, it's just really about hydration. So I base my class on that. And then the oven, it's, how to start one, what you can use them for, how to use them when you shut them down. The great thing about them is they're amazing dehydrators. So if you have fruits, meats, veg, anything you wanted to hydrate, you slide them in on a tray, close the lid, and 2 days later, you have the best dehydrated product you've ever seen. It doesn't have to be 2 days necessarily, but you can use it for up to 2 days with the lid shut, and it'll still sit at 160 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
So they're really,
I guess safely. Yeah, it's being done.
They're really, really great ovens for that, lack of a better term. But it's the versatility of them. And then, they do impart some nice flavor, right, that you don't normally get off of just a regular oven or a smoker, or, it's just slightly different. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, we're working on some classes. I think a butchery class would be good too. I have an event coming up in May with a local chef. She does our pastries, Waylon Lucas. She wrote a cookbook, Sunny Side Up, that we carry as well, and she's great. Like, the product she puts out is amazing, and she's just a really great person to know and to be around. She's doing a class for some friends. It's more of a female forward retreat for a group of women, and so she wanted to add a segment of teaching butchery. And so I've been pondering what to do for this for weeks, and I really felt like I didn't want to be rude, but if you were to go to Costco, especially in this state, like the Costco in Salt Lake is amazing. You could open a business out of that thing. Yeah, their meat market is amazing too, right? Like the product that they carry and the quantities you can get.
Yeah.
So, but if you were to go in there and buy a whole tenderloin, something that's not broken down, what do you do with it? How do you use it? Was kind of my premise for the class. Would be approachable items that you could get at a store. Not necessarily our store either. If you're somewhere else too, what if you move? I want the class to be of use in the future. So, in a tenderloin, there's a lot of waste. I personally do not like that cut of meat. The fillet is not my favorite cut. I don't like the waste off of the animal to get that cut the way the customer wants it. So what do you do with that waste instead of making it waste, like I said earlier? Turn that into something that's valuable. Fajitas, or grind it, or you can do all sorts of things.
What's your favorite cut of meat?
I really like the skirt steak. That's one of my favorites.
That's really thin, kind of like a flank steak, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. It's a little bit softer, but
not
really unctuous. Yeah. I
made one time. I remember.
I love short ribs, especially from the chuck area.
Oh, yeah.
That area of the animal gets so much work. The neck area too. I love beef neck. We use beef neck for one of our sandwiches. We dry age it slightly and then roast it off, slice it thin, and put it on a sandwich. We do a play on a French dip. We call it the Butler dip.
So a little beef neck sandwich. I like that.
Yeah. If you think about the protein part, right, blood flow and such, like that neck is, the animal's always moving its head up and down to eat. It's always moving the shoulder area. So you get, really, really good quality meat out of that area of the animal.
I have to come in there and try it. Let's, we have to kind of shift directions. So typically we're going to kind of change this a little bit here for you, because typically we'll say, hey, when we have friends and family visit Salt Lake City, what do we take and show them? What do we, what's the tour we give them? So I'm going to kind of word this differently for you since you're in Park City, and I want to know because I don't get a chance to go to Park City as much as I should. So what would you tell people, or let's reword this for you, John. If you have friends or family that are visiting Park City, what would you tell them to check out or visit?
Where would you drag them, kicking and screaming? Or where would you take them to?
As far as restaurants, I would say we enjoy Yukiyama a lot. It's a Japanese restaurant on Main Street. I think Main Street has a great diversity. You can go to a Japanese restaurant. You could go to an American restaurant. You can, there's plenty of culture on that street. And then walk into an art gallery, Macmillan Fine Art. This is an amazing place. I would take people there just to see what Jared sees through his camera, right? And through his lens. But yet you can walk down and get some chocolate across the street or ice cream, right? So Park City Main Street would be kind of as a whole, just to name a few little hot spots on there. Otherwise, I'd go down to Afterward and Heber. Their food's amazing. 21 and over, so don't bring kids. We have a child, so we have to miss going there sometimes. So it's like a date night. If you haven't been out to Woodland for breakfast, go visit the Woodland Biscuit Company. It's a great drive out there too. You can go out to the cheese farm when they're open. Gold Creek is out that way. Mirror Lake Donuts, oddly, over in Camas, is some of the best donuts I've had.
That's very important to know.
Yeah, and that's funny up here that I've noticed. Coming from such big cities and areas that have a ton of food diversity, we don't up here, or do not have a lot of food diversity up here. So I'm excited to see some of the new places that are coming online, because quite a few new, people have found out the secret, I think, a little bit of Park City, that it's been kind of hidden for a while and a little bit of a ski town, and it's not so shoulder seasoned anymore. And, a lot more housing has erupted up here. From what I've seen, I'm new, so I can't speak to, 5 years, 10 years ago, but I've watched it happen. I lived in Las Vegas for 11 years and watched dirt roads turn into freeways, so you start seeing growth happening. When you see a bunch of cranes everywhere, that means something, right?
Yeah. And hopefully, like you said, like more diversity, more food, more, hopefully it just brings a lot more into our lives and enriches everybody.
Yeah. A lot more people,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. This area has a lot to offer from, biking trails, and which I'm just finally getting on a bike this year and learning about that. So, but if you're a snowboarder, the Canyons is awesome, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite mountains.
Are you a snowboarder? I
am. Yeah.
You're in the golden. You're in the golden.
When you said that, I've always wanted to snowboard, but I am way too old at this point. So kudos to you. Like, I'm not going to start.
Yeah, I never learned to ski, man. I could never do two skis. I can wakeboard too. I can't water ski with two skis. I could single ski, but I can't. I don't know why. I could never do the pizza or whatever they call it. The stuff. I could just never figure it out.
It's hard because like one leg goes that way and the other leg goes that way.
And maybe it's from like skateboarding as a kid and doing that. I don't know. I think that's the route I went. And I learned to snowboard at such a young age. I was like 16, so I've been doing it for almost 29 years.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, I've been going at it for a while.
So you're probably pretty good. You can do a couple jumps and do some.
I'm one of those
stuff
speed
like
guys. I like to go really fast.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, really? Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah. I like to get to if I can get to 60 miles an hour in a day, that was a good day.
Is that see now? Okay, so I'm not a big skier or snowboarder. Is that 60 miles per hour seems fast?
That seems fast to me. I don't know. I know people that pass me. So
okay.
And I know people that are way better at jumps and all that. I don't fall very often, I still fall once in a while. I just laugh when I do. It's fun. There's nothing better than being on top of a mountain and just staring off at, when you're at 9,000 feet, looking out across the horizon. And it's so peaceful and quiet. And,
it's
it kind
probably
of grounds
super
me.
Majestic.
It is. I've always loved it. And you're in your own space. You don't have to the great thing about the canyons and living up here is during the weeks, you can get on runs and not see a soul. And it's just you and, the snow and nature. It's awesome.
Dude, I am so glad that we got you on the podcast, man. I am so glad.
Thank you.
I know there was a couple of scheduling conflicts there a couple of times, but I'm glad we were able to get it all figured out and worked out. And I know we just kind of skimmed the surface with everything, man. And basically, I'll have all the links at iamsaltlake.com for Chop Shop Park City. What's the address of your shop out there, man?
Yeah, we're 1177 Center Drive. We're nestled between Best Buy and Hearth and Hill. Really great location in New Park. So yeah, definitely come check us out. We're open Tuesday through Sunday, closed on Mondays, 10 to 6, and then Sundays are 11 to 4.
And if someone shows up, what would you suggest they order?
It's funny. I have trouble with that one because I love every dish.
That's
so I really,
hard.
it's like what do you feel like? You know, I'm kind of like back to like, I'll cook dinner for you, but just tell me what you want, you know? But so I asked, do you want beef, pork? Do you want chicken? Like the new fried chicken sandwich we put on about a month ago has been doing really, really well. I've worked for so many different fried chicken companies. So it's, the Firebird.
Yum.
So I went with a harissa flavor, which is like a Tunisian northern kind of flavor, if you will. A little bit more robust smokiness to it that you wouldn't get from just like another hot sauce, if you will. So, but simple brioche, lettuce, tomato. I even actually, funny is when I built that sandwich, I took a photo of it and I texted to Corey. And I was like, does this look familiar? Because it's the same build as his Secret Sunday chicken. I just like the format that it holds the lettuce, the tomato, the chicken, the bread, everything holds together on that build we came up with. So you laugh,
nice.
But yeah. So,
the
Jen Corelli really holds something near and dear to my heart, though. Rick Gencarelli is who it's named after, from the owner of Lardo. Was fortunate enough to help him build the Lardo in Vegas and learn a lot from him and become really close friends. And his porchetta sandwich was one of my favorites. So when we were looking again at like menu items and different, I needed something other than beef, right? So I just called him. I was like, look, I want to copy your sandwich. I'm going to use a different bread. Yeah, I'm going to make it. So I could call it whatever I want, but I'd rather just pay homage to you since you're the one that taught me the sandwich. And so I called the Jen Corelli. His is a ciabatta bread that he makes. And then our bread is a sourdough that we get from a local baker, Hawk and Sparrow, out of Midway. Andrew does amazing work. He might kill me for talking about him on here because I think he's already overwhelmed with work, but I don't care. He's the best. Some of the best bread.
Time to hire some people.
It really is. Yeah, I'm like, as long as I just keep sending me bread, please.
Yeah. Just keep giving us bread. Don't care how it happens. Good job.
It was really, really great.
Chrissy has a final question that she asks everybody that comes through here, John. So I'm going to let her ask you. Thank you again for recording with us, man. And we'll just have to kind of catch up down the road, bring you on, and see how the Chop Shop's doing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for real. This was really fun. Thank you. Before we let you go, could you leave our listeners and us with a piece of life advice or a motto that you live by?
Cook good food and go home. Work hard, but go home. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your time with your family because it's brief.
Thanks again to John Courtney for joining us on this episode of the podcast. All of the links that we mentioned in this conversation can be found with this episode's show notes on our podcast website at iamsaltlake.com. And to get straight to this episode, iamsaltlake.com/480 for episode 480.
Hey, yeah, reach out to John. Go tell him, say, hey, I heard you on the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Go buy a steak.
Hey, I want to mention there's a couple of ways you can support this podcast. There's a few ways you can do it monetarily or non-monetarily. First and foremost, you can leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts. This doesn't cost you anything, but it lets people know what you think of the podcast, and it lets Chrissy and I know what you think of the podcast too, because
we can do better. What can we improve on? Yeah,
we always love hearing from our listeners. You can also share your favorite episodes on social media from iamsaltlake.com. That's where all the episodes are. You can share some of those episodes, or better yet, you can become a Patreon supporter. I love our Patreon supporters, and you can become one by going to patreon.com/iamsaltlake. All right, you guys have a great week this week. It's going to be beautiful out there. Get out and enjoy the city. Support local. And we're going to see you next week on the next episode of I Am Salt Lake Podcast.
And good night, Grammy.